This is a presentation for topic 6, post-occupancy evaluations, and it's a part of the subject, building lifecycle maintenance. Now this presentation is a summary and an overview of the topic, and it's not intended to replace or substitute the study guide for this topic. Now the subject, post-occupancy evaluations, I'm going to refer to it as POEs, which is the term commonly used in building delivery and facilities and building management. It's really an evaluation and feedback. How did the design go? How did the building perform? It's the cornerstone to continued design improvement, and that process of continuous improvement is extremely important in the changing environment, or should I say changing markets. It's not unusual for all industries to do this type of process evaluation and product evaluation. Dell, for instance, set up a social media site and was very interested in what customers thought of its product, in so much that people were able to comment thumbs up, I dig, I don't dig, and as a result, Dell were very quickly able to respond to these and make minor or major changes to their products for sale. Other areas such as clothing and fashion, should it be low carbon, high quality, easy care, long wearing, no ironing, wash and wear, and what are people looking for in the next season. And social networking really has now played a major impact on product feedback and awareness, and possible improvement or perception of the product. Internet websites such as getsatisfaction.com, where customers have used your product or service every day, and lets them get engaged. Getting them engaged is the most inspired method of selling a product. So what I like about the post-occupancy evaluation is, and all these products, is in most cases the users, the tenants, the customers, they have a lot of ideas and opinions. They usually know more about your product, and they know it better than what you do, or they know more about your building, better what you do quite often. So you can see from the diagram that we've got in the current PowerPoint, is that it's this continual circular motion of improvement, design, the build, the measure, the strategy, and it goes back into design, development and delivery. So it's a continual improvement process. So in this presentation, we're going to be looking at 2 case studies and really considering what the POE is about, and looking at 2 real life models on how it's applied, what we're trying to achieve there, and looking at whether the customers and the users and the building managers, whether they're satisfied with the building. So what is the POE all about? It's pretty clear that sometimes projects go wrong because the client's not really clear about what it is that they want. They're not clear in the brief. These funny photos that I've got here, the Ferrari or the sports car that's stuck in the garage is too narrow, the toilet that does everything, the urinals that are too close together, and the stairs that really aren't useful for children or older people using the stairway. I often look at these type of situations and say, well, who's the bigger fool here? Is it the designer, or is it the person that paid for it? What were they thinking of when they put these designs to paper, or when they sort of looked at their problem, and did they really think of the real solution? And are they likely to make the same mistake again, or have they made the same mistake before? And that's where POEs start coming into this sort of scenario. So there's positives and negatives also in surveying the completed work and the completed building. The post-occupancy evaluation provides advantages for those that do conduct a post-occupancy evaluation. Increased design know-how. As I said previously, the process of continual improvement, considering the whole life environment, the community around it, and minimising maintenance costs, minimising operation costs, and really good customer feedback and customer relations as well. This diagram really does quite simply summarise the benefits of conducting post-occupancy evaluations. Very clear that there's human benefits, that's both from a customer satisfaction level, the tenants, the people using the building managers and owners, organisational benefits, professional benefits, and facilities benefits overall too. So this diagram here is very simplistic. It shows existing buildings as they're completed, a post-occupancy evaluation is carried out, and all the information, those three buildings shown at the top, the information's pushed forward as lessons learnt, and those lessons then are fed forward into all the future design on all future buildings. So all those positive findings, the initiatives and the positive designs are all incorporated into new buildings, knowing that these things are really going to work and really make that building design and the function of that building a success. Having said that, all the things that didn't work, all the things that are bad design or shouldn't be incorporated, can be left out, or if required, can be modified into the future buildings. The methodology of the post-occupancy evaluation, this is quite important. And before we even get there, there's three levels of post-occupancy evaluation. There's the indicative level. It's a quick and cheap way of doing a walkthrough and some fairly structured interviews. The findings are limited, but it gives us a taste of what's going on. The investigative POE, with interviews, surveys, photographs, and video recordings, and ratings using a 5-point Likert scale. Quite good response, and the information becomes valuable for us to make some decisions with as well. And then a diagnostic POE, which is a really long-term cross-sectional evaluation that usually goes over a period of time. So once we've identified what type of POE we're going to use, when the POE should be considered being conducted 12 months after the building's completed, and that's because we've done a full year of seasons. We've gone through summer, winter, autumn, and spring. The commissioning period's completed. The building should be operating correctly, and all the services should be now tweaked to suit the occupants and the environment and the climate. Looking at the planning, how will it be done? What type of marketing, interviews, data collection? Is it going to be flyers? Are we going to use surveys that are filled out online? Are they going to be surveys that you walk around with and hand out and get back? What type of questionnaires, and the timing of this process too. So there's a few things that need to be really considered once we start putting the POE forward, because remember, it's a great marketing tool, it's a great communication tool too. So it needs to be planned and conducted professionally, and it needs to be planned so that it can be streamlined, and the occupants, their time isn't wasted, and they feel that their contribution to the survey is going to be listened to, and it's important. Consider the key survey themes, and we're talking there about what the building's all about, what type of zones are in the building. Is there offices, lecture theatres, eating areas, is there meeting rooms, those type of things. The human comfort levels too. So what are we looking for with temperature, with lighting, demographic details, how many adults, how many children, how many patients. So there's a number of things that we need to sort of get clear in the survey. What is the building all about, and what are the occupants? Who are the people using, and who are the people managing the building and the building spaces, and maintaining those spaces as well. I spoke a little bit about the 5-point Likert scale rated 1 to 5, whereas 1 denotes less favourable, very poor, and 5 denoting a very favourable, excellent result. And it's important that the SCAR rating remains consistent throughout all of the questions. And in this particular example that I've put up here, the organisation's target is to maintain an average of 3.7 in the 5-point scale, and so that's considered that a rating of 70% or more of respondents are marking good or higher. So let's consider now 2 case studies to give you some better idea of when a post-occupancy evaluation would be used, and what the results might be and what those results mean to both the designers, the builders and contractors, the facilities managers, building owners, and even the occupants as well. These are 2 university buildings, a visual arts building and a science building that I've chosen for these case studies. The first building, a simple basic overview. It's a science building. It was around $6.4 million to build, just under 3,000 square metres of gross floor area, a student population of 130 and a staff population, or continued staff population within the building of 29. The other building in this study, the visual arts building, building costs are around $4 million, gross floor area just under 2,200 square metres, and similar building population, student numbers of 129 and the staff population of 28. So as I said before, what will be interesting here will be the results, because the people that are using the buildings are very different, what they're looking for and what they require from the space. So let's have a look at the 2 case studies now in a bit more detail. So if we look at how the survey was approached, this is a simple matrix showing the number of surveys distributed. So there was 271 distributed overall, number of surveys returned 185, and percentage of response rate 68%. So that's really not too bad. There was the method of survey, a combination of postal, so either by email or a paper copy that's gone out and been returned, or a combination of postal and captive. And captive can be where you've got a group of people in the room and you've surveyed them there as well. So if we move on now to once we get the results back and we start looking at those Likert scales in summary and start to plot them, we end up with graphs like this one here. And you can sort of start looking at trends in the graphs as well. What's good and what's bad. In this particular instance here, we can see, well, external appearance. This is what customers of both buildings, or occupants of both buildings, really enjoyed the external experience. What they didn't like were things like the external signage, the direction finding, natural lighting, the pin-up provisions, and the thermal comfort. So already we're getting a bit of a taste of what's working in our design and what's not working. Now again, if we look at the same data coming back on the Likert scale 1 to 5, we can do a gap analysis too, and from this we can consider, well, what are those issues which we're really finding some major differences there in the buildings. Again, is thermal comfort, noise, artificial lighting, size and capacity to meet needs. So again, we're starting to get a bit of a taste of what people recognise as important, and they need further direction for them to use the space correctly. It doesn't, however, at this stage, this is only the quantitative response. It's not the qualitative. It's not what people are saying. So some of these things might have qualifications that need to be considered at the time of survey. Now, then if we move on and consider the achieving the overall university objectives and educational objectives, we can see how staff and student in the different bar colours there, what each of them think. So whether it's assisting innovative teaching and science, there's some differences there. There's some real differences if we look at size and capacity to meet educational needs there, the one on the bottom line. So 3.6 and 2.9. 3.6 not quite achieving our benchmark of 3.7. And from a staff perspective, both value for money and size and capacity, they're really not satisfied at this stage that the building's actually meeting the everyday requirements for educational and university objectives. So if we look at the spread on those numbers, size and considering future need of that building space, we can see that a lot of the staff numbers are rating it very poor, or average compared to the students. The students, they believe it's good or excellent. And already this is fairly important feedback for people that are planning space at this particular educational facility, and also the designers of future space. But if we look at the two buildings overall and say, well, taking everything into account, what do you think of this building? You can see here that the majority of people believe the building falls into the excellent and good category. So that's really good feedback to have. Internal layout is something that I always strongly believe that it's been a successful design if we can get it to function properly. And the interesting feedback here, looking at all customers combined, or occupants combined, is that, again, it's coming back to layout and design maybe not meeting expectations. So that also aligns to the earlier question and result we had with university and educational objectives and being able to meet future needs. The other issue here, which I think is important, is the foyer and waiting areas. That's only hitting a 3.5 out of the preferred benchmark of 3.7. So it's coming under the organisation's target and objectives. And foyer and waiting areas, they're generally areas where people assemble before and after a lecture, or before and after to meet with one another. So that's a very important result there. Appearance and aesthetics. Looking through here, we can see generally the architecture of the outside of the building and how it sits on the site and how it appears to the eye. The results here all appear to be very good. Everybody's very satisfied and very happy with how the building has turned out that way. Having said that, though, our questions that explore a little bit further the functionality outside the building, we find that external signs and wayfinding, direction finding, and external seating is really quite poor. And external seating, again, in this here, getting a 3.1 result, again, it's very interesting. It sort of relates back to our result we were looking at with foyers as well. Areas where people like to meet, people like to spend time or otherwise meet other people before and after meetings, before and after lectures, those type of things. And this graph here, this drills down a little bit further then on the result that we got for external seating. And as you can see here, it's not just students, it's staff and students that are dissatisfied with the external seating arrangement with the design of these buildings. And only 30 to 35% of the total population surveyed believe the external seating is adequate. So these are really good results that really help the feedback into future designs of buildings. As I said earlier, when we're looking at the methodology of the post-occupancy evaluation, we need to consider the room types. And the room types is really valuable then once we start pointing those questions towards the occupants on what they actually think of the rooms. Did they actually work for them? And are they providing the type of functionality and a place to do their job effectively? And as you can see here, there's a number of rooms that didn't quite make the requirements and satisfaction of the occupants, from the postgraduate rooms, technical offices, exhibition, teaching studios and workshop facilities. So there's a number of issues there that need either further explanation and investigation from a POE point of view, or might have answers in the qualitative side of the POE, which is the questionnaires, the actual interviews and focus group discussions. And again, in this graph here, showing rooms that again didn't achieve 3.7. And again here, the graph this time showing the student satisfaction. The previous graph was showing staff satisfaction with particular rooms. And interestingly enough, it's coming back to the very same or similar types of rooms. The one point of interest in this one, though, I must say, is the foyer and waiting areas. And so obviously students are spending a lot more time in that space than what lecturers or building staff are. So that's a very important zone to be considered in the design on how it operates and how it functions properly. So if we move now to the science building, the user and staff satisfaction with all rooms. Very interesting here. Again, many rooms that fall under the target of 3.7. The worst being the cold room, freezer rooms, meeting, lunch rooms, storerooms, instrument rooms, that type of thing. So there's a number of things there which really aren't satisfying the requirements for the science users and staff. And they're very different types of rooms even compared to what we were looking at with the visual arts rooms in the first place. Now if we look at the science building, the results for students with satisfaction with rooms, you'll see that interestingly enough the students probably aren't as critical about some of these rooms. And there might be a couple of reasons there. One of them is that they don't live in the building for 40 to 60 hours a week. That's one issue. And the other issue is if you look at those type of rooms which appeal to them or they use more and have more of a connection to, again, the foyers and waiting areas. So that's something that's common with students in both buildings as being a problem. Instrument rooms, seminar rooms, and the other similar rooms there, they consider them not adequate, but nowhere near as critical as the staff rating those particular types of rooms. So if we consider customer or occupant satisfaction, I should say, with things like fittings and finishes and environmental performance, these are very interesting results. And as I said earlier, you really do need to understand the demographic. So the type of type of people that are using that building space, and that's very important from both the design, initial design. That's important from the build quality and the build commission, and it's important also from the maintenance of the building too. But you can see some fundamental little things here already: the pin-up and display provisions, and natural lighting, and artificial lighting. The reason why these two buildings are very different: in a science building, there isn't sometimes a great deal of natural lighting. Artificial lighting is very important. Whereas in a visual arts type of building, the natural lighting can play a major role in the success of a space and being able to have a very useful studio. Again, if we consider the results, all customers combined, so it's both buildings. If we consider whether the building achieved its desired outcomes with safety and security, general ambience and flexibility and adaptability, well, from these results here, you can say that the building has been relatively successful. Hasn't quite achieved the flexibility and adaptability, but again, that might be having some indication on its ability to achieve future demands and be able to plan for future educational objectives. Okay, so let's move on now to submarines. And some of you are wondering, why is he now talking about submarines on post-occupancy evaluations? Well, interestingly enough, a generator failed on one of these naval vessels. This is a Collins class submarine. And a generator failing seems like, I suppose, a relatively simple task to have it fixed or have it replaced. The generator, however, was in one of the Collins class submarines, the unique Australian design built in Adelaide. A senior defence official, Kim Gills, told the Senior Senate Estimates Committee's hearings on early last year that the hatch on the Collins class submarine was only 1 metre in diameter. Now, the generator that was to be replaced or to be taken out and fixed with its surrounds was 1.093 metres. So the generator couldn't fit in or out of the submarine. So what it meant was a generator could be taken out of a normal ship, it could be fixed and put back within 2 or 3 weeks. But in this particular instance, in the Collins class submarine, it would take anything up from 23 to 25 weeks. My point of the post-occupancy evaluation then, with this submarine example, is that any future design or any future build of a submarine, then it really needs to take those lessons learned and incorporate it in the future design so that way it can improve the functionality, the maintenance, and to prevent the amount of downtime in a highly important and highly strategic asset for the Australian Navy. So going back to the case studies of both the visual arts building and the science buildings, and we look at the responses from the maintenance and building operators. Very interesting to note that once we then start looking at issues associated with mechanical and ventilation, which in the science building is a very important component of the building, and also looking at access for cleaning in the visual arts there, in both areas that they perform very badly. So there's some areas already we can see that need improvement in future design to ensure that the buildings maintain the function and again, not out of commission. The buildings are actually reliable and quick and efficient to maintain and rectify should they need replacement of parts and service of equipment. Now, if we summarise a lot of the results into 4 strategic areas, that we can then look at the summary of these results, these 5-point Likert scales, the quantitative data, and put it into customer satisfaction results. So if we do that, this is for all customers, we can see that strategic, we've achieved a 3.7, access, we're just under, appearance 3.7, and ambience 3.6. So if we look at it overall from a customer satisfaction in a summary of indices, the buildings have performed remarkably well. If we break those results down and show them building by building, we can see that in the science building, however, from a strategy perspective, the occupants believe that the building hasn't achieved what it should have done in its original design. And again, that probably comes back to issues associated with being able to plan for future educational and future strategic objectives. If we now consider the visual arts, the customer satisfaction indices and results, the staff seem to be much happier with access and ambience and appearance, but in the strategic issues associated with the building, it appears both staff and students believe that it didn't quite achieve the strategic initiatives in its design and delivery. So it's quite easy then to start identifying key outcomes for consideration in both the studies, and from here we're getting dot points that are very useful for our designers and for our contractors and for maintenance people to be more aware of, and to show more initiative and provide input when it comes to considering, are the occupants satisfied, and also is the building achieving what it should be achieving, and is it being maintained in a manner which achieves and satisfies the occupants in some of these areas. So it's now a good opportunity to look back at the original feed-forward diagram that I showed at the beginning of this topic presentation. And as you can see, a lot of those outcomes, a lot of those key findings coming out from those two buildings are the findings that then get fed forward into the lessons learned. So all of those findings get fed forward for the design, the construction and the maintenance of future buildings then. So now's a good opportunity for you to review the topic on post-occupancy evaluation. I suggest you go back and read the study guide again, refer to subject text and course reading, work through the workbook activities, and if you have any questions, post them on the student forum or otherwise email me.